What if I told you that illegal crossings at the US-Canada border just dropped by nearly 90%? Yeah, you heard that right, 90%. While everyone's attention is glued to the southern border, something absolutely major is happening up north, and the mainstream media isn't talking about it nearly enough. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host here in Info Express, and if you're new here, this is where we break down the most important migration news between the United States and Canada every single week. No fluff, no bias, just the facts you need to know. This week, we've got some game-changing developments. We're talking about massive hiring initiatives, high-tech drones patrolling the border, policy changes that took effect overnight, and some statistics that will absolutely blow your mind. Whether you're an immigrant, thinking about moving across the border, a policy enthusiast, or just someone who wants to understand what's really happening in North America. Trust me, you need to see this. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive deep into this week's migration news. And hey, stick around until the end because I'm going to share some practical advice that could save you months of headaches if you're planning any cross-border moves. And next September, I'll be starting under Bressonin. Alright, let's jump right into the headline story. Prime Minister Mark Carney just announced one of the most significant border security expansions in Canadian history, and I want you to understand exactly what this means. First up, Canada is hiring 1,000 new Canada Border Services Agency officers. Now, that might not sound like a huge number when you first hear it, but let me put this in perspective for you. The CBSA currently employs about 14,000 people total. So we're talking about increasing their workforce by roughly 7% in one go. That's massive for a government agency. But here's what really caught my attention. They're not just hiring, they're making the job way more attractive. The recruit stipend is jumping from $125 per week to $525 per week. That's more than a 300% increase. Why does this matter? Because training border officers takes time and money, and Canada is clearly serious about attracting top talent. They want people who are committed, well-trained, and ready to handle the complexities of modern border management. Think about it. Higher pay during training means they can be more selective about who they hire. It also means they're likely to retain these officers longer, which leads to more experienced, more effective border security over time. Now, this is where things get really interesting, and honestly, kind of futuristic. Canada isn't just throwing more people at the border, they're deploying serious technology. They've just deployed 60 new drones along the US-Canada border. Let that sink in for a second. These aren't your average consumer drones. We're talking about professional-grade surveillance drones that can cover vast stretches of terrain that would be impossible to monitor with human patrols alone. The US-Canada border is nearly 9,000 kilometers long. That's about 5,500 miles. It's the longest international border in the world, and much of it runs through remote wilderness, forests, and mountains. Traditional patrol methods just can't cover all of that effectively. Drones change the game completely. But wait, there's more. Canada is also planning to install additional surveillance towers along strategic points of the border. These towers will have advanced camera systems, motion sensors, and likely thermal imaging capabilities. It's a multi-layered approach to border security. And then we've got the equipment upgrades. New X-ray machines for scanning vehicles and cargo, mobile X-ray units that can be deployed to different locations as needed, and handheld chemical analyzers for detecting drugs and other contraband. This is CSI-level technology being deployed at border crossings. What this tells me is that Canada is moving toward a smart border model, using technology to enhance human decision-making rather than replace it. The officers will have better tools, better intelligence, and better capability to identify actual threats while processing legitimate travelers more efficiently. Okay, now I want to talk about something that flew under the radar for most people, but if you're in the immigration community, this was huge. Let's talk about flagpoling. For those who don't know, flagpoling was this immigration hack that temporary residents in Canada used for years. Here's how it worked. Let's say you're in Canada on a work permit and you need to activate a new visa or get a work permit extension. Normally, you'd have to apply and wait weeks or even months for processing. But with flagpoling, you could literally drive to the US border, tell the US border officer you're just flagpoling, meaning you don't actually want to enter the US. They'd turn you around, and then you'd re-enter Canada. At the Canadian port of entry, you could get your immigration paperwork processed immediately. same-day service. This became so popular that some border crossings had dedicated lines for flagpoling. International students used it, temporary workers used it, even some permanent residence applicants used it. It was technically legal, but it was clearly not what the system was designed for. On December 24, 2024, Canada shut it down completely. No more flagpoling, and the impact was immediate. An 86% drop in this practice overnight. That's what happens when you close a loophole that thousands of people were using. Now, why did Canada do this? A few reasons. First, it was creating unnecessary traffic at border crossings. Second, it was taking up resources that could be used for actual border security. And third, and I think this is the real reason, it was allowing people to bypass the normal immigration processing times, which created unfairness in the system. If you could afford to drive to a border and flagpole, you got faster service than someone who couldn't. That's not equitable. So while this change is inconvenient for many people, I actually think it makes the system fairer overall. The takeaway? If you're in Canada on a temporary visa, you need to plan ahead now. No more last-minute border runs. Submit your applications with plenty of time to spare. Alright, let's get into the numbers because this is where you really see the impact of all these changes. Stat number 1, 89% decrease in illegal US crossings by foreign nationals in Canada from June to December 2024. Let me repeat that. 89%. In just 6 months, Canada reduced illegal border crossings by nearly 9/10. That's not a marginal improvement, that's a complete transformation. What changed? Well, all those policies we just talked about. Increased enforcement, better technology, more officers. They all came together. But there's also something else at play here. When word gets out that enforcement is serious, it has a deterrent effect. People don't attempt crossings they think will fail. Stat number 2, 61% increase in refusals from high-risk countries. Now, the government hasn't published exactly which countries they're classifying as high risk. But what this tells us is that border officers are being more selective and more stringent in their screening processes. This is where that additional training and those extra officers come into play. They have more time and resources to properly vet applications rather than rubber stamping everything that comes through. Stat number 3, 18% drop in asylum claims by Canadian visa holders from October to November 2024 alone. This is a 1-month change, and it's significant. Asylum claims are complex. People have legitimate reasons to seek asylum, but there's also been concern about abuse of the system. A drop like this suggests either that the screening is catching ineligible claims earlier, or that the changes in policy are discouraging people who might not have legitimate asylum grounds from applying in the first place. Now, let's put all this in context with the US southern border. Last year, the southern border saw approximately 1.5 million illegal crossings. The northern border, fewer than 24,000. That's less than 2% of the southern border's number. So, when politicians talk about border security being a crisis, they're almost always talking about the southern border. The northern border is a completely different situation. Lower volume, different challenges, and honestly a different relationship between the countries. But here's an interesting detail. More than 80% of migrant apprehensions at the northern border are happening in one area, the Swanton sector. This covers parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York. Why there? Geography. It's one of the easier areas to cross, with more roads and less remote wilderness than other parts of the border. Let me share a recent example that shows how border security actually works on the ground. On October 8th of this year, so just last month, 4 individuals were arrested after illegally crossing from the US into Canada near Abbotsford, British Columbia. Now, what's important about this story isn't just the arrest, it's how it happened. Canadian and American authorities worked together, sharing intelligence and coordinating their response. This is what effective border management looks like. The US-Canada relationship is unique. We're not just neighbors, we're close allies with deeply integrated economies. Over 400,000 people cross this border legally every single day for work, tourism, trade, and family visits. The challenge is maintaining security without disrupting that essential flow of legitimate travel. This is why you see cooperation rather than confrontation. When Canada strengthens its border security, it helps the US too, because it prevents people from using Canada as a backdoor into America. And when the US shares intelligence about potential threats, it helps Canada identify security risks before they reach the border. Both countries have Border Patrol and CBSA officers stationed at each other's airports for pre-clearance. Both countries share biometric data, watch lists, and intelligence. This isn't about building walls, it's about smart, coordinated security. And here's something most people don't realize: the vast majority of people who cross illegally at the northern border aren't Canadians or Americans. They're third country nationals who entered one country legally and then tried to cross into the other illegally. That's why information sharing is so crucial. Okay, so we've covered all the news and policy changes. Now let me give you some practical advice, because this is where theory meets reality. If you're planning to immigrate to Canada, here's what you need to know right now. First, processing times are getting longer. With the end of flagpoling and increased scrutiny, don't expect quick turnarounds. If you need a visa extension or status change, apply at least 3 to 4 months before your current status expires. I know the government says it takes less time, but trust me, build in a buffer. Second, documentation is everything. Border officers have better tools and more training now. That means they're catching inconsistencies and incomplete applications more often, but triple-check every document. Make sure your work letters are on company letterhead, your bank statements show consistent income, and your travel history is complete and accurate. Third, don't try shortcuts. With flagpoling gone and enforcement up, this is not the time to try creative solutions or listen to someone's cousin who says they know a trick. Go through official channels, use licensed immigration consultants if you need help, and do things by the book. Fourth, monitor policy changes. Immigration policy is changing faster than ever. What's true today might not be true next month. Follow official government social media, subscribe to newsletters, and yes, subscribe to channels like this one that break down the changes in plain English. And fifth, keep digital records. Take photos of every stamp in your passport, save every email from immigration authorities, keep copies of every application you submit. If something goes wrong, having a complete paper trail can save your case. Alright, we've covered a lot of ground today, from drones and X-ray machines to policy changes and statistics. But here's what I want you to do next. First, if this video helped you understand what's happening at the US-Canada border, please hit that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this video to more people who need this information. And honestly, it lets me know you want more content like this. Second, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. I post migration news updates every single week, and things are changing so fast right now that you don't want to miss an episode. Trust me, next week's update is going to be just as important as this one. Third, and this is really important to me, leave a comment below. I want to hear your perspective. Do you think Canada's border security measures are necessary, or have they gone too far? Are you affected by any of these changes? Have you tried to cross the border recently? What was your experience? I read every single comment, and honestly, I learn as much from you as you hopefully learn from these videos. Your real-world experiences and perspectives make this community valuable. Also, if there's a specific immigration topic you want me to cover in next week's video, drop that in the comments too. Want to know about work permits, student visas, express entry updates? Let me know, and I'll research it for next week's episode. And if you found this video especially helpful, share it with someone who's thinking about immigrating or who works in immigration. Knowledge is power, and the more informed our community is, the better decisions we all make. The big picture story here is that Canada is fundamentally reshaping how it manages its border with the United States. We're talking about 1,000 new officers, cutting-edge surveillance technology, stricter enforcement, and the end of practices like flagpoling that people relied on for years. The results speak for themselves: an 89% drop in illegal crossings, increased refusals from high-risk countries, and fewer asylum claims. Whether you see these changes as positive or negative probably depends on your personal situation and your values around immigration. But here's what I want you to remember. Behind every statistic is a human being. Behind every policy change is someone's dream of a better life, someone's family waiting to be reunited, someone's career hanging in the balance. Immigration isn't just about numbers and borders, it's about people. That's why staying informed matters. That's why understanding these policies matters. Because knowledge gives you the power to make better decisions, to plan ahead, to protect yourself and your family. So thank you so much for watching today's episode. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Remember, whether you're a citizen, a visa holder, a prospective immigrant, or just someone interested in policy, you're part of this community, and your voice matters. I'll see you next week with another migration news update. Until then, stay informed, stay prepared, and keep asking questions.